This is ContactTalkRadio.com, Consciousness in Action, and you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning to Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Hing.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio. Welcome to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. Joan and Janet are subtle energy empaths who navigate consciousness. Their passion is to support you in your evolution. As consciousness, we are all one. One mind, one heart, free of all limitations. Experience this reality with us and discover how it can make a difference in your daily living. Join us in a state of grace as we explore, with warmth and humor, this thing we call life. Now, here are Joan Newcomb and Janet Barrett.
Welcome to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. We're your co-host, Joan Newcomb, coming to you from Tacoma, Washington, and my partner, Janet Barrett, is coming to you from Portland, Oregon.
Hello, everyone. How nice to be with you again.
We have a great show for you today. We are going to be talking about consciousness and wonkiness. Now, everything today seems out of whack. It's hard to feel like you're making any progress. So stay tuned, because Janet and I are going to be telling you, or discovering for ourselves, how to navigate through chaos with ease and grace.
Okay. And here's an invitation to go deeper with us, to connect with us beyond this show. You can join us at our website, www.consciousconversationswithjoanandjanet.com. And there you're going to find out our list of all our podcasts. And you can click on any of those. We have our blogs, both Joan and I write, and share what we're noticing about life and with our groups. And about our meetups, both Joan and I. She up in the Puget Sound area of Washington, and myself here in Portland, Oregon. We both offer groups, one-on-one groups. And they are one-on-one groups because the group is one. So I can say that successfully. And then you'll find out about our sessions. Both of her and I work with people all different times, places, and spaces. So Joan's going to give you all that great info about our connections on Twitter and Facebook and wherever else we are. Joan, take it away.
Sure. And I'll just do a quick mention about the meetups that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. Janet does hers, because Meetup is kind of a social media that is unique in that you can find the groups online and then meet in person. So Janet does hers on Tuesday nights and on Wednesday afternoons, and her lovely
Thursday afternoons.
Oh, Thursday afternoons. Yes, everybody's going to show up at your house today.
We got some walk going.
Better get some treats out, right? So Thursday afternoons in her lovely home near Reed College, and they are really delightful experiences. I strongly suggest them. And then I do them around the Puget Sound, anywhere from Seattle to Tacoma and places in between. And my next one coming up is going to be in University Place, which is actually a little bit, well, it's within the Tacoma vicinity, not University District in Seattle. It's University Place near Tacoma, near the Whole Foods, and it is on February the 25th from 2 to 4 at the University Place Library, and it's free, and we'll be doing conscious conversations. We'll be talking all about this transformation of consciousness and the inexplicable experiences of expansion that we're all having.
Yes. So we'll give them all that data about that Twitter.
Oh, right. Give me back to the other stuff. So the other stuff is, you can find the links and everything both on our Contact Talk radio page and also on Conscious Conversations with JoanandJanet.com. But if you happen to hang out on Facebook, the show is on Facebook, Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. So join the group and join the fun. And then Janet is on Facebook. Find her at Janet Barrett. And you can listen, you can discover all her consciousness cookies. Yeah. And then I am on Facebook, Joan Newcomb. So join me there and see all the interesting things that I post. I no longer post corgis. So what do I post? Well, I and then
it's
Twitter.
Nothing like a posted corgi. Okay.
Right, a corgi and a post. There.
Yeah.
Corgis on stilts.
Yeah.
So the show is on Twitter. The Twitter handle is at Joan and Janet, because Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet was too long for Twitter. And then I'm on Twitter at Joan Newcomb. And Janet, just to keep you on your toes, Janet is on Twitter at Janet Beyond.
Yes. My consciousness cookies are there every day.
You can find her consciousness cookies everywhere. She's baking all the time. And then you can also subscribe to us on YouTube. The show is on YouTube. Guess what? It's Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. And you can binge listen to all the shows that are on YouTube there. You can also find me on YouTube. Guess what? It's Joan Newcomb. But you can also find my individual mystic musings. I put out a YouTube video every week, and you can find that on Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet.com.
Yeah, and I want to let people know I've got a new live interactive group. It's going to start meeting on Thursdays. In a couple of weeks, you can email me at janetb@janetandbeyond.com and to get more information. And it'll be hopefully 6 to 10 people using Zoom video conferencing. And it will be like being in my living room with us. So, I can guarantee that stuff will happen and it's going to be a really fun experience. So get back to me at janetb@janetandbeyond.com and let's talk. All right. So.
Yeah, those are really significant things. We, for a short while we maybe done a couple, maybe 2 or 3 conference calls that way, and there is no distance. Mm-hmm. So you can get the same effect being on the phone, but for me, when you can have a visual, so you'll have a visual with that Zoom, that you can really feel the effects. Yeah. So for those of you outside of Portland, this is a wonderful opportunity, and give Janet a call or give Janet an email. What was your Janet? What was your email again? janetb@janetandbeyond.com. And Joan, tell them about your transformation games workshop. We got those going. Yes, I do. I do lots of transformative things, and you can find all my transformative stuff on my website, joan-newcomb.com. And besides the transformation game workshops, which are something I do here in the area, I have a do-it-yourself program called Do-It-Yourself Total Transformation. And you can find out more about that at my website, joan-newcomb.com. And my coaching stuff, all the coaching stuff I do is there.
Well, it's all about the wonk. Okay. That's what today's show is about. And you may have noticed some of it already. We came up with this title because a couple weeks ago, I was doing some stuff in group and stuff opened up. And then last week when all the astrological wonders of blue moons and super moons and red moons and whatever those moons were doing up there, I just noticed stuff in a different way. And normally I would have maybe classified it as chaos, but that's not the word that came. What came was wonky. And I thought, what's different if I look at it? And for me, wonky had fun in it. So, and when we were talking, Joan, you were mentioning things in your own world that were starting to undo themselves a bit.
Yes, and then I was also, you and I were getting into a definition thing because you were viewing wonky and I would have called it wacky.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Because for me, wacky is eccentric. Wacky is amusing. It's like you see a wacky comedy. Mm-hmm. And when something is wonky, it's something that is off and something that is wrong. The term out of whack is actually, it's spelled different than whack. It's with an H. So something that's out of whack is kind of, it's very similar to something is wonky.
Yeah. But my association is Willy Wonka. Wonky, so it was like fun. So yeah, different association. And
though it's interesting because if you look at the Willy Wonka, the who did it most recently, the Pirates
that was
Caribbean guy.
He's
endearing, but the Johnny Depp version was there's something a little creepy about that guy.
Oh, right.
So
okay.
He took the dark side of wonkiness. And so, but I do know when you're in kind of the matrix field is that there's no good or bad about the energy. So you could find things being wonky as pleasant. It's But I have to say, when you look around the world with things going wonky, there's a sense of being disturbed with it. And so I think my point here today was about shifting our perspective, our perception from the discomfort, there's something wrong, that things are chaotic, to a higher perspective and a more pleasant experience. And you know what? I'm going to keep you in suspense about that because we have to stop for a commercial break. But stay tuned because Janet and I will be talking about consciousness and wonkiness when we come right back.
Would you like a fresh approach to the challenges you are dealing with? Take a journey into your enlightenment with Janet Barrett. Janet is a subtle energies empath, accessing the field of potential with warmth, humor, and support. She will help you to hear what your inner voice is saying. She will share with you how to appreciate who you are now and offer you new ways to understand and transform your issues. Reach her at www.janetandbeyond.com. That's janetandbeyond.com. Again, janetandbeyond.com. Transformation is possible. You can enjoy new outcomes in your current experiences. They can happen in the blink of an eye. Is your soul calling you to do something more meaningful with your life? Do you feel crazy for wanting to quit your secure job? Perhaps you are waiting until you retire to do what you love. Maybe you are too daunted to follow your dream. If any of these match your life, then Joan Newcomb's Purpose and Passion Coaching Program is just for you. In just 12 weeks, you will discover who you essentially are and why you are here. Learn to live as your greater self and navigate with conscious mastery. Go to joan-newcomb.com. That's joan-newcomb.com for all of her coaching programs.
You are listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. To reach our program, please send questions and comments to consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. That's consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Now, back to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet.
Welcome back. You're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I am your host, Joan, and I am along here with Janet. And we are talking about consciousness and wonkiness.
Yeah, wonky. Well, I like wonky. I heard it clearly, that voice, and I went, okay, and I felt good when I heard it. So I'm going to go with that and not what any of us must describe of it. And the reason it was important to me is because it felt different than if I sit with chaos. And I'm pretty good with chaos because I appreciate that that's uproar and what that's about. But as I was noticing it from an energetic place in a bigger reference, I could feel the heaviness of that because a lot of people aren't comfortable with change and shift and whatever chaos is happening and means for them. So when I heard wonky, I was like, oh, that's fun to me because I was holding it in a fun reference. And I certainly can appreciate wacky and holding that a fun reference. But I was like, it was the key to taking something that I would hold in a certain way. And in light of all the shifting and opening that has come up in the last couple of weeks, that it was very apparent that things were not tracking the way they normally would. And
Right.
So I was happy about that. Right. And I was feeling good about that. And it was unsettling while, everything was shifting for certain. But it was like, it led me to just maintain that it was okay in a different way than if I had used the word chaos. So that's what this is about. And for all of us, you're going to key into different language. And that's what Joan and I so appreciate, how we use language, the same word, how we use different language for the same meaning. There's all these layers that we play in. So whatever the comfort zone is for you, in noticing what we're talking about is the opening up. Don't you think, Joan? It's about the opening up. We see.
Yeah, and you know what was just flashing on me, because I was looking back to some experiences that we had when we did some seminars or had some seminars together. And so, there are people who enjoy the vibe of a rock concert.
Yeah.
But they also enjoy the vibe of getting high and, or getting drunk, and that's enjoyable to them. And that's not enjoyable to me. That doesn't give me a sense of clarity. So to me, that's the vibe of wonkiness, is that kind of distortion of the senses. And to me, the idea of wackiness is more of a sharp perception or a heightened perception. So,
well, I was struck because it's not a word that I use very much, right? And I was like, So when I looked up, the meaning, it says crooked, off-center, askew, unsteady, shaky. And that has a different energy feeling to me than chaos. So I have tolerance for that, where you just described, that bothers you. For me, I have a tolerance for that. And I let myself go there and just see what happens. And so that was a re-encoding for me and of that energy. And it took it out of a judgment place to a softer place. And I think that's in this time when we're looking at communications and why people do things and how we respond and all these compromises and all these upsets and all these stuff, me being more comfortable, finding a place of comfort in that flow, knowing it's not going to stay there. I know that it's not going to stay that way because I am going to adjust to it. So then the flow becomes me, or I become the flow, or whatever it is. And so that journey will be different. And I think, so I'm embracing it. I'll put up with it for a while.
Well, you brought up the term chaos, and that is an interesting thing because we usually have a lot of discomfort with chaos. It's just like people running around like chickens with their heads cut off, and yet there's the chaos theory that there's actually organization in chaos. Like if you take a look at an anthill, it may look chaotic, but when you break it down, the ants all have a very specific job and order. And even when you disturb an anthill, the ants themselves are snapped into action. Yeah. So they're running around and fixing it. So, how it feels to me today with the chaos going on in the world is that their rigid structures and no longer useful structures are in the process of breaking down and disintegrating, and it's causing a strong reaction to people, which then we are discerning their reactions, the energy of their reactions as chaos. It's correct. Their reactions, their behaviors seem chaotic. But when you can step back and look at it as consciousness, you can appreciate that what it is it's in the process of reorganizing. That which is dysfunctional or no longer useful is disintegrating. And what is emerging has a sense of freedom to it that can also disturb people if they are used to, trying to keep control, keep a lid on it. So that can be really uncomfortable to them.
Well, I think it's also how you embrace the state. So if something's you can feel now is crooked or off center, and be with that and go, well, what's the different viewpoint that shows up here? What it gives me a different way of engaging information. What also has come up this week is about communications, or the last couple of weeks, communications, and also the logic. I've been dealing with different kinds of logic have exposed themselves and how we interact with one another coming from our particular perspective that is held together by a logic. And we may not share the same kinds of logic. And you can get that definitely when you're talking about interacting with another human. That you share maybe the language, you maybe share words, but once again, there's a different perspectives on that. And your story holds together, and you have formed this logic that gives it meaning and validity. And the challenge for any of us is when our logic is eliminating anything that shows up that might provide a different viewpoint to it. And so that's where oh, well, it's not that. And so those opportunities disappear. What I'm seeing is how in this time we've shifted a little bit to where we're more centered and able to view ourselves from within that off-center place and hold ourselves together and utilize it. And I'm really excited to feel and experience that shift, because that's not being knocked over. That's just being, oh, there's a little off-center of how I've organized this before. And I think that's a good place to be.
Yeah. Yeah, there was something that you were saying that I was gonna touch base on, but I guess I must have shifted over and I'm no longer, I don't know what that was. But what I find is with this sense of consciousness evolution, this shift in consciousness, is that it requires me to let go of my rigidity and my old expectations or old presumptions, and to kind of hold reality loosely. Mm-hmm. And for me, that requires stepping back in order to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And stepping out of the drama, stepping out of the reactivity. And when for you, you would say it's like being in heart space. Mm-hmm. You know, you can be in this state of appreciation. And, I always come from a more clairvoyant perspective of seeing it expansively. So when you can see it that way, it can actually be positive. It can be exciting. You can have it being pleasant or joyous rather than, oh my gosh, the world is ending.
Yeah.
Because it's turning into something we don't understand or know. Oh, that's what I was going to say to you. It was about logic. You were talking about logic. And logic to me is a very left brain kind of thing. So when you're talking about your logic, Janet, that doesn't make sense to me because I don't know if you have a left brain. So how would you define your logic versus, let's say, your husband's logic?
Well, okay, this is a great place to explore fuzzy logic.
Yes, please define fuzzy logic.
Oh, great. Okay, you're going to ask me to be the scientist. Okay, so scientists I don't know who the hell will be talking about this, but fuzzy logic is where the awareness is more about the space of 0 to 1, as opposed to logic, which is 0 and 1. And this is my own way of looking at this because I read the definition.
You lost me the moment you started doing numbers.
So here it is. So numbers, right? So when people look at stuff, it's usually zeros and ones, right? Those are the basis of what we build a life about. Are those sacred 0 and 1s? Computers run on zeros and ones. And fuzzy logic, binary. And fuzzy logic embraces all the numbers in between 0 and 1, like 0.002, like 0.05, there's all kinds of numbers in between. Yes. So you shift from it's this or this, which is duality, which is this or this, right or wrong, black and white, to polarity, which is here we start here, and there's all these places before we get to here. And so that means when you observe things, it's not just this or that. It's maybe this, maybe that. It gives you a different value. It gives you a range of values. So for me, my fuzzy logic, and I think probably that's my left brain, right, is that it does allow for all those variables. And it doesn't have to be this or that. You say it has to be this or that because that's your kind of logic. And I'm not saying you personally. I'm just saying, in the other person. And we do this all the time. Logic is inherent to how the left brain manifests the right brain stuff. And so it's the blend of the two. And we will always have the logic in any pattern because it's a unique logic to you and how you organize information and experience it. And we may share a lot of points because it's creating our reality. And then again, that interpersonal place is unique to each of us. So, that too has come up in this. And so what you want to do with all that, right? And neither's right or wrong. It's just different appreciations of how we experience information and which in turn dictates our world and how we experience it. So did that make sense?
It does in a kind of a fuzzy way, but no. But what you very clearly illustrated is the fuzzy logic is almost it's like the difference between Newtonian physics and quantum physics.
Oh dear. Okay.
And the quantum physicians are looking at something sort of beyond what Newtonian physics can measure. So Newtonian physics would acknowledge the one and the twos and kind of miss out on the points in between that takes you to subatomic particles and where the origins of creation are. Kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I
0 to 1s.
Yeah, I grok that.
Yeah.
I grok that without any math past 9th grade, but I grok it.
Yeah. So listeners, just notice how you're relating to the conversation. Do you find yourself on one side or the other or somewhere in between? Because this is what you want to be able to know. So it's going to determine how you're viewing yourself as perspective, or if you see self as separate from perspective, which anymore is not to me. So it's all in the mix. And if you start to feel your boundaries and your hard, rigid, stuck stuff defining, your labels shifting, your experiences shifting, embrace that. That's probably a sign of good health and wholeness because you're unfolding into your truth, that inner voice, that heart-centered awareness that I always like to be strongly for. So, that's where the grace is. When you can soften things, you'll experience grace because you're not in judgment of it. You're not. And, one thing we got into last night was about sabotage and self-saboteurs and
interesting.
All that energy about how to have fun and all these associations we have with experiencing life differently and, and not being aware that in trying to protect ourselves or define ourselves or to be something, we kind of cut ourselves off. It can work a couple of different ways. So once again, it's stepping back and going, well, okay, I did this. And what led to that? And you can backtrack that. You can reverse engineer something without the emotion in it, which is what consciousness allows us to do, because self is very involved in our emotional state. And you just go, oh, okay, that's where that's coming from. I'd like to change that. And that's what's really fun.
Yes. And I was opening my mouth to comment on something you just said, and it completely evaporated.
We're really
Things
clearing
are
the deck.
really wonky today.
Right.
Where were you going with all that? And what was I following along with? I was dog paddling hard to catch up. One ringy-dingy. I thought that was in the other room.
That one is, but I turned the other one on, so in case you needed to call me. It's off now. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
How rude.
It's the point. In this house, those are confirmation. Bells and whistles, and when you hear a phone, it's like, oh, it is always at the right place in the conversation. So
yeah,
whatever we were conversing about. There you go.
Right, exactly. Well, it's always interesting to see who's making the call, who's tuning in.
Oh, totally.
Correct.
Isn't that the fun part when you do have that happen? And there they are. Yeah.
Still can't remember what I was going to say.
So say something.
That was interesting. One ringy-dingy, two ringy-dingy. We were logic, numbers, something else. Fuzzies. I was going off to my grade 9 math class in Ottawa.
Oh, really? That must
it was the last time I took math, was grade 9.
In Ottawa. That probably makes a distinction.
It does actually make a distinction. It was a very good education. Canadian education is so much more quality than the United States. I was taking grade 13 classes when I was in grade 10.
Yeah. And that's nothing against the public school system in the U.S., but okay.
Yes, it is, but anyhow.
Well, it's not against the teachers, okay?
No, absolutely not. But it's definitely
about the system. See, you got off one there. Yeah.
Well, I certainly am judgmental today, but.
Well, sometimes that's okay, right? I mean, we hear ourselves say something, and then you go, did I really mean that? Or that's really that dynamic that we access, and we go, well, no, I did mean it. And you go, okay, you're totally entitled to your emotions. Who's going to judge them? Oh, everybody. And that's ridiculous, so. Yeah.
Consciousness and wonkiness. Consciousness and wonkiness.
Yeah.
Consciousness and, and from the perspective of consciousness, it's all okay.
Well, I was connected to the fun, which was interesting. And, that's initially what my experience was. Oh, that's more fun to feel it that way. And so it was going for the feeling. And do we allow a lot of fun in our lives? A lot of us are pretty serious about our spirituality, our religion, our politics, our relation. It's so serious. And we forget the joy. And so we get off into joy, and we can distraction. And that's a distraction. Just, are you enjoying yourself? Right? Because we encode things, we say things, and it's not always our authentic place. It's the place that responds by rote. It's the reactive place. So we just are all in different places, but I think it's appreciation. Oh, I know it. Gal called with a survey the other day. It was a political survey, of course. And she said, well, if there was a third party. And I said, I'm all for the third party. And I said, it's a compassionate party. Give up with the Republicans and the Democrats and all this stuff. Just about the compassionate party. Treat others with respect, kindness, compassion. What happens if we put that back into it? And that's just what dominates, that's the mission, right? Did you find it yet, John?
It came and went again. But when I know what. But I was going to touch base on something else that you just said, which had to do with, when you discern things as good or bad, or right or wrong, and therefore also if you discern it as chaotic and chaotic is bad, or any of those things, that you're viewing it from the perspective of your body and your personality. So if you think of this life as a game, then it's you viewing it as the player in the game or the avatar in the game, rather than the essence of who you are. And when you can step back and either go into heart space or step back behind yourself from the greater infinite experience, then you can view all of this with a sense of amusement. It goes from wonky to wacky. You can view it, you can allow it all to unfold and reorganize as it is doing, without having to without having to fight it or change it or fix it, because it's all reorganizing. It's all reorganizing into something more fun and interesting.
Well, we really have become very warrior oriented, right? I think as humans, and that sets up, our inherentness is to survive. That's what life is. It can be a game of survival, or it can be our focus, or it can be whatever. But without life, we're not here to question life in this way at all. We question it in a different way, perhaps. And that if you're in a state of warrior, then that shifts how you are. And the word peace doesn't work, because that's like the duality of war. And that's not necessarily useful either. So, but you can find what you're talking about is that things have to be adversarial, in that kind of setup.
Yes.
There have to be winners and losers. Oh my God, people go on and on about winners and losers, and you see it everywhere. And it's like, is this helpful? Is this, what's motivating you, right? And we each need to look at that and go, I see. I feel, I don't feel very good. I don't want to fight my body and having a cold and putting my immune system through hell because I'm making it a battleground, as opposed to just what it does as its function. That's what an immune system does. Or battle the winter blahs, for instance, that was on the paper the other day. It's like, oh great, now I'm an adversary to winter, and now I'm an adversary to when I don't feel good. Great. How useful is that? It's not, because it keeps perpetrating stuff, So a little fun could go a long way. It doesn't have to be silly clown, which I find very rarely funny. But that place inside of that has the giggle in it.
Right.
Embrace the giggle. That's what you want to do, Joan. Embrace your giggle.
Well, what you're talking about for me is that when you're viewing things from this expanded perspective of consciousness, there is a sense of amusement. Mm-hmm. There's a sense of lightheartedness. It may be subtle, but it can also be pretty broad. And so when you're finding that inner giggle, as you say, you're really touching base with that part of you that is not that is not attached to the survival, life and death part of it. Mm-hmm. That is not projecting that this is going to be the end of all mankind, or I'm going to personally die, or any of those sort of things. Because as consciousness, there is no death. It's just all reorganizing to something else.
But I might even question your statement there, Joan, about that the fun amusement is not about life or threatening or something that can't. It's all garbled up already. Because what if it was? What if that is? How would life be different? I mean, that's where we're all kind of looking to support, and we're kind of just putting it over there as a frill, as a thing that helps. What if it's essential? What if you laughed yourself silly? What happens when people of opposition share something that's funny? It changes the whole dynamic. We're actually looking for that. We want people around us that can break the ice, so to speak. And that's why there's always a joke at the beginning of a speech, right? You're trying to get people to relax, to be your side, and change maybe how they view you, because they see that you're not this stiff, upright thing, or this informational source. Your humanity is present. Your consciousness is present. So I think I'll change. I think kindness, fun. I'll put fun in there.
Yeah. Well, and that it's the energy of consciousness to me is benevolent. Mm-hmm. And so when you're truly resting in that, you do feel this benevolence, you do feel this compassion, this love of all mankind, this compassion for the foibles of mankind and the appreciation
and your own
your own humanity, and also your appreciation of the creation of it all, since as consciousness you are the creator. So, so it's very pleasant.
I think where we get off track is when the self is the habituated response. That's what self does. Oh, okay. All right. I'll do that. That's that left brain. That's that logic at work. And so it can run amok. Well, there's a good word, amok. And it's ourselves, it's consciousness looking at that going, okay. Let's bring it back in. And even that has a likeness to it, Then you go, Doesn't judge. I mean, isn't that what good parenting is? It just appreciates the child and just is amazed at it. I mean, and not always do any of us have had that experience. So we're creating that for ourselves. And I think that may be part of the challenge for us is we don't have a lot of examples of that. So how do you know how to love without attachment if you've never experienced it? How do you know how to have fun if you've never had it? So, it's all those kind of things.
Yeah. So now what?
Well, there's many different kinds of fun. I know for you love information. Yeah. You're the one with the 42 windows open on your computer. That's entertaining to you, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah. So it's just in noticing what gives us pleasure and realizing that whatever it is, if it feels good in some way, to recognize that. And, you can certainly be out of whack about that. There's that word. People who do things, but that feeling good is coming out of a wounded place. It's coming out of a place that's, not sharing, and the delights of being. So, we have different references, all different places, and I like wonky.
Yeah, and there's another thing I was going to comment on that. It's completely out the window.
Those kind of days, okay.
It really is. It's like, oh, well, the clouds are just coming by. Well, it's like the different ways of expressing fun and feeling fun. And when I'm experiencing it from the greater aspect of consciousness, there's an expansiveness to it. There's a joyousness to it. There can be a sense of childlike wonder to it. And so I feel like I think you did touch base on this already. That's why I had dropped it. But it was like, it's not an escapist fun. It's not a trying to get away from something, right. Because that's fear-based, and fear-based is always body level. So bodies, are never going to make it out of this lifetime alive. So they take things in very seriously, very, very seriously. And, because
there's an investment in outcome.
Is this going to kill me kind of thing?
Right.
Whereas consciousness just has this expansiveness, and joyousness to it. So there's this greater, wider appreciation and relaxation kind of into it.
Yeah.
And so how do you navigate from one to another?
Don't panic. Stop. That's my first thing. People write to me all the time and they describe something and I go, stop, breathe. Because it's like a runaway train sometimes in there, right? And so we have to just stop and go, okay, all right, something's pushing my buttons, and give ourselves some perspective, which to me is consciousness, and engaging that part of us. And so for me, this is all heart-centered awareness, and you're in and out of it, and you're just always holding. And the only reason you're in and out of it is because it's where you are feeling you're viewing yourself from. You're always in heart-centered awareness. You're always consciousness. And we just sometimes put it aside and we have our physical experience and then we go back. So it's just inviting ourselves to not panic, right? And breathe. And I think right now everyone can kind of feel the calm that's there underneath everything, which is what you're looking for. We all walked out of here last night just going, that's really quiet. And the stillness shows up, I think, because there's nothing to do. There's only noticing at that level what we like to embrace.
Well, I invite people to get in touch with the quietness and the stillness within them and hold that space while we take another commercial break. And stay tuned because we will come right back talking about consciousness and wonkiness.
Is your soul calling you to do something more meaningful with your life? Do you feel crazy for wanting to quit your secure job? Perhaps you are waiting until you retire to do what you love. Maybe you are too daunted to follow your dream. If any of these match your life, then Joan Newcomb's Purpose and Passion Coaching Program is just for you. In just 12 weeks, you will discover who you essentially are and why you are here. Learn to live as your greater self and navigate with conscious mastery. Go to joan-newcomb.com. That's joan-newcomb.com for all of her coaching programs. Would you like a fresh approach to the challenges you are dealing with? Take a journey into your enlightenment with Janet Barrett. Janet is a subtle energies empath, accessing the field of potential with warmth, humor, and support. She will help you to hear what your inner voice is saying. She will share with you how to appreciate who you are now and offer you new ways to understand and transform your issues. Reach her at www.janetandbeyond.com. That's janetandbeyond.com. Again, janetandbeyond.com. Transformation is possible. You can enjoy new outcomes in your current experiences. They can happen in the blink of an eye.
You are listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. To reach our program, please send questions and comments to consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. That's consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Now, back to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet.
Welcome back. You're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. This is your host, Joan, talking with Janet, and we are talking about consciousness and wonkiness.
And wackiness, right? And chaos.
And chaos, right. And the chaos theory. The chaos theory of wackiness. All those wacky scientists.
Oh, there you go. The chaos. Okay, what would that be, Joan? The chaos theory of wackiness. Well, remind me about the chaos theory.
My understanding of the chaos theory is that there's actually, at the minute level, there's order. It's a little bit like looking at the chaos of an anthill, right? But they all actually have a very precise way that they're moving. So when you look at the energy of chaos, on one level it looks like everything's just being thrown up in the air and it's all random. Mm-hmm. But from a greater perspective of it, it is actually everything is reorganizing into place. That's how I was thinking
about that earlier, actually, about how things, you can see them coming, you can feel them coming, you can experience in some sensory level something. And, or there's a reality set that happens with consciousness because there is no time and space where things just manifest. They just show up. And you had no warning. You had no whatever. And those are two different ways of, and there's a myriad of different ways of appreciating how we experience life, where we can take it all apart and think we're observing and be consciousness and do all that stuff. And then where we just are allowing ourselves to be the powerful creator that we are, and just, there it is. And how that works and how that happens. And as consciousness, things can happen that way because you don't have a timing or a spacing element that is the same as the way you think you are living your reality. And so what if this is all easy? What if you had no resistance to, oh, okay, here I find myself, and I don't have to come undone as opposed to unfold. A lot of people don't like to be undone.
Yes. And, things that are undone or things that are unfolding or those sorts of things is that they're all unraveling and reorganizing into their natural conclusions. So with that, we want to let folks know how to go deeper with us and connect with us beyond the show. We have a website, ConsciousConversationsWithJoanandJanet.com, and there you can go to listen to all our podcasts, and you can also read our blogs. Janet and I both write very fascinating and interesting blogs. You can learn about our meetups. Janet holds hers in her lovely home in Portland on Tuesday evenings and on Thursday afternoons. I do mine around the Puget Sound. My next one coming up is in University Place near Tacoma, and it is at the University Place Library on February the 25th from 2 to 4 p.m. in their conference room. What else here? We have sessions. You can learn all about our sessions. Janet does hers. We both do ours by Skype, by phone, in person. Those are available on the website as well. I could really trip you up, Janet, and have you tell them all about Facebook. But we only have 3 minutes. So.
Yeah, right. That's in my fuzzy logic range. So, see, and that's where reality, it is useful to have these things, But
I will have to say, it's pretty simple. Facebook is pretty simple. It's either your name or my name, Joan Newcomb or Janet Barrett, or it's the show's name, Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. And join us there on Facebook and join the group and join the fun. You can follow us on Twitter. That's a little more complicated because we couldn't get Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet on Twitter. We had to go with Joan and Janet. So at Joan and Janet is the show on Twitter. I'm Joan Newcomb because I make it easier for you, at Joan Newcomb. Janet's mysterious, so she's at Janet Beyond on Twitter. And you can find all our information there. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube and binge listen to the show on YouTube if YouTube is your preferred choice. And I know actually more people can access YouTube around the world than any of the other social medias. You can find me on YouTube, Joan Newcomb, and I do weekly Mystic Minutes and sometimes post my webinars and some other things that I have going. You can also find my YouTube videos on ConsciousConversationsWithJoanandJanet.com. Tell them about your Zoomy thing.
Oh, right. Okay. So you hear us talking about group here each week in my house. And so using Zoom starting, I think it's going to probably be in 2 weeks, February 23rd around there on Thursday. I'm going to be offering live interactive groups using Zoom, just like what we do here. And I'm going to tell you, you will feel it. So, contact me at Janet B, the letter B, at janetandbeyond.com for more information about that. And I look forward to you joining me here. Oh, Joan. It's kind of wonky, kind of wacky, kind of soft.
Right. And so I invite people just to sit back, have an energy margarita and enjoy the ride. We appreciate you listening. It doesn't matter whether you're catching us live or whether you're catching us via podcast, because there's no time or space. It's consciousness. So your energies are helping to create the morphic field that we're experiencing today, and we really appreciate it.
Always an appreciation. And thank those on LinkedIn. I got people still contacting me through there. That's great. I love it. So
you've been listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I'm your host, Joan, along here with Janet, and tune in next week, same time, same channels.
We'll look forward.
You've been listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. And thanks so much for helping to co-create the show, no matter if you're listening live or on demand. You energetically contribute to our collective experience. Joan and Janet love to hear from you and invite you to email your comments and ideas for them to explore each week. Contact them at consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Tune in next week for another great show, and until then, keep enjoying this wonderful adventure we call life.